All right. Seems to be some controversy out online. I've looked on a lot of blog sites about drilling out your rotors and why. And I'm going to keep this kind of pertaining to any of your early vintage, the late 70s and, any bike with solid rotors. The material back from then had a tendency with the heat buildup to gall on the pads, and I wish I had saved the old pads that came off this bike. This is an XS650. When you flipped them over and looked at them, it was like sparkly little diamonds all over the pad. And as you can see here, you can't feel it obviously, but there's some ridges worn into the rotor. So what happens is that material galls up, causes more friction, and actually galls into the material, and that you'll actually burn. You got steel on steel, not good. So the theory of drilling your rotors, it's not for lightening them up, and I know I'm going to probably get some flack about this. It's not about weight. It's, at this vintage of a bike, it's not about gases building up between the pad and the rotor. What happens here is when I drill these out, you leave the edges so that this hole, that leading edge to this leading edge, overlaps at some little distance. All right. As that hole swings through that pad as it's rotating around, it shaves off the material that gets built up and stuck to the pad. That's the theory behind it. This sharp leading edge coming through the pad with pressure on it will actually help shave off the stuff that burns off and sticks to the pad. Thus for less material galling up on the pads, better friction on the rotor. The only thing you really have to be careful about, which I'll have to keep an eye on, because obviously this is my own ass riding on this bike down the road. When you're drilling out rotors like that, you got to make sure you don't have too much excess heat that'll crack out anywhere. So I have to keep an eye on that. I haven't heard of anybody else having any issues with that. I wouldn't suggest doing this just freehand on a drill press. This was done on a Bridgeport with a ProTrack, and it took me about 45 minutes. I did this one and I did the rear, but it's not really, you can make it look pretty obviously, but it's really not about pretty. It's about, and again, this will be proven because this is the first time I've done it, so it'll be whether it works or not, I'll keep up and post it on you, and I'll repost. This is January into February, and I won't be riding until probably May or June once I finish doing all the wiring on this bike. But I'm gonna follow up on this theory, and this is just what I've read. It's not about lightning. It's not just about looking cool. It's not really about venting gases. When you're talking solid rotors on a 70s or 80s, early 80s bike, it's just about trying to keep that material from galling up on the pads, and it can hopefully, from what I read online, is with some time, these ridges are not that deep. They're maybe, you're talking 5-10 thousandths, a little bit wear in here. The rear was worse because whoever owned this bike was a rear brake rider. But what I've read is that with this being done, it'll actually clean up over time. All these ridges will actually clean up over time with the friction and the grinding of the pads against the rotor. So that's another thing that'll be yet to be proven. So that's why I've read why you drill your rotors. All right. Any arguments? I'm free to them on comments or any compliments or anything like that. Let's start the ball rolling. Thanks, YouTubers.